White sat very still in the gilded chair at the head of the long hall, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The nobles gathered around the table were arguing in raised voices, each man trying to outshout the other. But Elena kept her gaze lowered on the polished wood before her. They weren't speaking to her. They never did. "A bride must be giving," Lord Henrik thundered, his jowls quivering with each syllable. "The Wolf King demands blood or a bride. Would you rather see our villages torn apart? Better to send soldiers than a maiden," Count Valen spat. "We bend our necks too easily to beasts." Her father, Duke Alistair White, lifted a hand and the hall quieted. His voice was smooth, practiced from years of ruling their house. "This war has already cost us too much. A bride is a small price compared to the slaughter of thousands." Elena's heart thudded painfully. She knew what came next even before her father's eyes settled on her. "My daughter Elena will serve our kingdom best in this role." The words were spoken as if she were an object, an offering at the altar. Gasps rippled through the hall, some pitying, some approving. Elena finally raised her head, her pale eyes meeting her father's cold ones. "I understand," she said softly. The nobles murmured at her composure. No trembling, no tears. But inside, Elena's stomach twisted into knots. She knew the stories. Human brides who went to the Wolf King never returned. Some said he devoured them on the wedding night. Others whispered he enslaved them until they begged for death. Her younger brother, Rowan, burst out from the side of the chamber, face red with fury. "Father, you cannot." "Elena, silence!" Duke Alistair snapped. "It is decided for the good of the realm." Elena placed a hand on Rowan's sleeve before he could speak again. "It's all rig." She murmured. Her voice was calm, though her heart raced. "If this is what must be done, I will do it." She did not add that she had no choice. The carriage waiting in the courtyard was black lacquered wood, adorned with the crest of the wolves, a silver crescent moon clasped in the jaws of a snarling beast. Soldiers stood ready, though they were not human. Tall, broad-shouldered figures with piercing eyes that glowed faintly gold in the morning light. Elena stepped from the castle in a gown of pale ivory, her veil trailing behind her. The townsfolk had gathered to watch. Some crossed themselves, whispering prayers for her soul. Others stared as if they were already mourning her. Rowan broke through the crowd, catching her hand before the guards could stop him. "Sister," he whispered, eyes wet. "Don't go. Run. We could escape tonight." Elena shook her head quickly. "If I run, the wolves will tear through our lands. You know this. Thousands would die. I don't care about them. I care about you." His voice cracked. She touched his cheek gently. "Then care enough to live. Protect our people in my place. Promise me, Rowan." His jaw clenched, but he nodded, swallowing back his grief. The wolf envoy, a towering man named Sereth, with dark hair and sharp canines visible even when he smiled, stepped forward impatiently. "The king waits," he growled. His common tongue was clipped, as if it grated on him to speak it. Elena released her brother's hand and allowed the guards to lead her to the carriage. She did not look back, though every instinct screamed at her to do so. The iron door shut with a heavy finality, and the horses, or rather the massive wolf-drawn team that pulled it, lurched forward. Her life as Elena White daughter of House White, ended the moment the carriage passed beyond the gates. Elena's first glimpse of her new home filled her with awe and dread in equal measure. The gates creaked open. Wolves prowled along the battlements, their eyes glowing in the dusk. They watched her arrival with suspicion and thinly veiled hunger. Inside the great hall, he waited. Magnus Dreadbane sat on a throne carved from obsidian, his massive frame draped in a cloak of black fur. His hair was as dark as midnight, his eyes an unnatural silver that caught every flicker of torchlight. Power radiated from him, heavy and suffocating. When Elena was led before him, she forced herself to lift her chin. She would not cower. "So," Magnus said, his voice a deep rumble that carried easily through the hall. "The humans send me their lamb." Elena met his gaze steadily. "They send you their daughter." A low growl rumbled in his chest, but to her surprise, amusement touched his lips. "Brave words. Tell me." "And if I chose to kill you where you stand?" Her heart pounded, but she did not look away. "Then my sacrifice would still have meaning." The hall fell silent. Wolves muttered among themselves, but Magnus only studied her. At last, he rose from his throne. He was taller than she'd expected, towering over her, broad-shouldered and terrifyingly strong. "Very well," he said at last. "Then you will be more than sacrifice. You will be my Luna." The declaration thundered through the hall. Gasps, growls, even outright snarls erupted from the gathered wolves. Elena stood frozen, not sure she had heard him correctly. Magnus's silver eyes locked on hers. "From this day, you are mine. Let any wolf who challenges it stand against me." The wedding took place under the full moon. As wolf custom demanded, Elena wore a gown of silver silk, the fabric foreign and heavy, woven by wolf hands. A circlet of black iron set with a single moonstone rested upon her head. Magnus stood beside her, a living shadow of power and menace. The priestess of the moon recited ancient vows in the wolf tongue, words Elena barely understood. When it was her turn to speak, Magnus's hand pressed gently at her back. "Repeat after me," he said, his deep voice low enough for only her to hear. She obeyed, stumbling through the foreign syllables. At the final phrase, he drew a dagger across his palm and offered it to her. Elena hesitated only a moment before mirroring the act, slicing her skin and pressing her bleeding. Servants whispered behind her back, quarters sneered openly, and Callista, the striking wolf with fiery hair and emerald eyes, made no effort to hide her fury. "You dishonor us, Magnus," Callista hissed as she approached the throne later that evening. "A human Luna. She is weak. She is prey." Ella Lenina stiffened, but Magnus leaned forward, silver eyes glinting. "Would you challenge me, Callista?" The wolfess bared her teeth, but did not speak. "Then hold your tongue," Magnus said coldly. "Or lose it." Callista's glare cut to Elena, promising a reckoning. She turned sharply and stalked away. Elena's pulse thundered, but Magnus leaned down, his voice quieter now. "You will face many like her. They believe strength is teeth and claws. Show them otherwise." She swallowed hard. "And if I fail, then you die," he said bluntly. "But if you live, they will bow to you." His words, she would not be devoured so easily. The next morning, Elena was summoned to the council chamber. The hall was cavernous, its stone walls carved with depictions of wolves hunting under the moon. A long table stretched before the throne where Magnus sat, flanked by his highest-ranking betas. Zareth stood at his right, arms folded over his chest, while the elders of the court filled the rest of the seats. Elena was guided to a smaller chair at Magnus's side. The wolf's eyes followed her as she sat, some burning with disdain, others with open hostility. "This meeting is to discuss the terms of the treaty," Magnus said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "The humans have given us a bride. In return, my armies will withdraw from their borders. Any wolf who challenges this pact challenges me." "Withdraw, Elder Vera." A sharp-faced wolfess with graying hair slammed her fist on the table. "We bleed for victory, and you ask us to retreat because of a human girl. Wolves respect only strength." Magnus leaned back in his throne, eyes glinting silver. "Strength is knowing when to fight and when to claim what you've already won. Through her, peace is ours." Elena forced herself to sit straighter, though her heart pounded. "I am not here to weaken your king," she said, her voice steady. "If I must prove my worth, I will. But peace benefits wolves as much as humans. Endless war feeds no one." A ripple of mutters ran through the chamber. Some sneered. But Zareth's sharp gaze lingered on her, unreadable. Callista's laugh cut through the noise. She lounged against the wall, her emerald eyes glittering. "Pretty words from prey. Tell me, little dove, what will you do when someone decides you're not worth the crown you wear?" Magnus's head turned sharply. "Careful, Callista." But Elena answered before he could. "Then I suppose I will have to prove them wrong." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the chamber. The council session continued, but Elena felt every gaze on her. She understood now. This was no sanctuary. She had walked into the wolf's den, and every eye was waiting for her to falter. That evening, Elena walked the fortress gardens, desperate for air beyond stone walls. Moonlight spilled across frosted grass, painting the world silver. She did not hear Callista until the wolf stepped from the shadows. "You don't belong here," Callista said, her voice low and sharp. "Do you know how many wolves died fighting for Magnus while your kind cowered in castles, and now he throws their sacrifices away for you?" Elena stopped walking, turning to face her. "I did not ask for this marriage, but I will not apologize for it either." Callista's lips curled into a sneer. "Courage from a lamb. How amusing. Tell me, do you think he loves you?" Elena's chest tightened, though she kept her expression calm. "I don't pretend to know the king's heart, but I know he chose me, and that apparently is enough to enrage you." The wolfess's eyes flashed, her claws extending slightly as if itching for violence. "Watch yourself, human. Wolves devour their weak." Before Elena could respond, Magnus's voice echoed from the far end of the garden. "Callista!" The wolf stiffened, then bowed mockingly before slinking away into the shadows. Magnus approached, his presence filling the night. "What did she say to you?" "That I don't belong," Elena admitted. He studied her face, then said simply, "Prove her wrong." There was no softness in his tone, yet Elena felt the words settle like an anchor inside her. The feast hall blazed with torchlight. Long tables overflowed with venison, roasted boar, and goblets of red wine. Wolves feasted loudly, their voices filling the chamber. Elena sat at Magnus's side, trying not to flinch at the sound of bones cracking under sharp teeth. A servant poured wine into her goblet. She lifted it, but Magnus's hand shot out, fingers closing around her wrist. "Don't drink," he said quietly. Startled, she lowered the cup. His eyes flicked to Zareth, who seized the goblet and sniffed it. His lips pulled back in a snarl. Poison. The hall erupted in chaos. Wolves leapt to their feet, growling accusations. Callista smirked from her place, though she said nothing. Magnus stood, his voice booming. Who dares try to kill their Luna in my hall? No one answered, but the tension was thick with suspicion. Elena forced herself to speak. Let them see that I live. Whoever did this failed. Magnus's gaze snapped to her surprise, flashing in his silver eyes. Then, with a sharp motion, he hurled the goblet to the floor. Find the traitor, he growled. Zareth barked orders, guards scattering into the corridors. The feast resumed, but unease hung over every bite. Elena kept her hands folded, though her pulse raced. She had survived her first attempt on her life, but it would. The last. That night, Elena could not sleep. She wandered the halls, the silence of the fortress pressing in. A low growl reached her ears. Following it, she came upon a courtyard bathed in moonlight. There, Magnus stood at the center. Only he was no longer a man. His body twisted and expanded, bones cracking as fur spread across his skin. Within seconds, the Wolf King stood in his full form. A massive beast of black fur, taller than any man, silver eyes blazing with feral light. Elena froze. Every instinct screamed at her to flee. Yet she did not move. Magnus's gaze found hers. For a terrible moment, she thought he would lunge, but instead he lowered his head as if testing her. Slowly, carefully, Elena stepped forward. Her hand trembled, but she lifted it until it hovered inches from his fur. Magnus growled, the sound rumbling like thunder. She held her ground. At last, his massive head dipped, allowing her fingers to brush his coat. His fur was warm, coarse, alive. For a moment, king and bride stood in fragile silence, beast and human, predator and prey. Then, with a shudder, Magnus shifted back, his body twisting until the man stood before her once more. His chest heaved, his skin glistening with sweat. You should fear me, he said hoarsely. Perhaps, Elena whispered, but I don't. His eyes darkened, unreadable. Then he turned away, leaving her alone with the echo of his beast. The next morning, Magnus summoned Elena to his private chambers. The room was vast, its walls lined with weapons and ancient wolf banners. He stood by the window, his back to her. You saw me last night? Yes, Elena admitted. And yet you still stand here. She lifted her chin. Should I have run? He turned then, his silver eyes catching the light. Most would. I am not most, she said simply. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then, unexpectedly, Magnus's lips curved in the faintest smile. Perhaps not. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. Understand this, Elena. My world is cruel. Wolves respect only power. If you show weakness, they will tear you apart. Then I won't show it. Magnus studied her as though weighing her words. At last, he inclined his head. Very well. Then we will stand together. It was not a promise of love, nor even of trust, but it was something more than she had dared to hope. An uneasy truce. And in the dangerous halls of the wolves, it was the first step toward survival. Magnus's voice echoed in the training yard. Again, Elena panted, the wooden practice sword heavy in her hands. She lifted it, her arm shaking, and swung toward Zareth. The wolf second in command caught the blow with effortless grace, twisting the weapon from her hands and sending it clattering to the ground. You hesitate, Zareth said sharply. That will kill you faster than poison. I am not a soldier, Elena snapped. frustration leaking into her voice. No, Zareth agreed. You are Luna, which makes you an even greater target. If you cannot defend yourself, you are already dead. Magnus stood at the edge of the yard, arms folded across his chest, watching with a critical gaze. He hadn't interfered once since training began. Elena bent to pick up the sword again. Sweat clung to her brow, her skirts torn from repeated falls. Then I suppose I must learn, she said tightly. Zareth's mouth twitched, almost approving. Good again. For hours, he forced her through drills, parries, strikes, footwork that left her bruised and exhausted. More than once, Elena thought she would collapse. But each time, Magnus's voice cut across the yard. Stand. And she did. By the time the sun dipped below the mountains, Elena's arms trembled so badly she could barely lift the sword. She dropped it at last, her chest heaving. Zareth inclined his head, the barest hint of respect in his golden eyes. You learn quickly for a human. Magnus stepped forward then, taking the sword from her hand. His expression was unreadable, but there was a glint in his gaze she had not seen before. You survived the first lesson, he said. Tomorrow you will do better. Elena swallowed hard, but nodded. For the first time since her arrival, she felt not just like prey, but like someone who could fight back. The next council meeting was even more tense than the first. Elder Vera slammed her hand on the table again. This farce cannot continue. A human Luna weakens us. Wolves murmur in the streets. They question your judgment, Magnus. Zareth leaned forward. They will obey their alpha, or they will face the consequences. Vera sneered. You speak as if fear alone will hold a kingdom together. What happens when our enemies rise, smelling weakness? Already whispers of rebellion stir. Elelina felt every eye slide toward her. Some glared openly, others with thinly veiled suspicion. She took a breath, steadying her voice. If your people see weakness in me, then give me a chance to show them otherwise. Bold words, Vera snapped. But words do not win wars. Magnus's hand closed around the arm of his throne. Enough. She is Luna, chosen by me. You question her. You question your alpha. The chamber fell into a tense silence. Callista leaned against the far wall, her emerald eyes glinting with mockery. Careful, my king. Defend her too fiercely, and they'll believe she holds you on a leash. Magnus's silver eyes cut toward her. Leashes are for dogs. Do you call yourself one, Callista? Laughter broke the tension slightly, but the undercurrent of hostility remained. Elena understood then. Acceptance would not be handed to her. She would have to wrench it from their claws herself. The attack came during a hunting excursion beyond the fortress walls. Elena rode beside Magnus Zareth, trailing a few paces behind. The air was crisp, snow crunching beneath hooves. Wolves prowled the ridges, their eyes gleaming in the pale light. A sudden whistle cut through the air. The next instant, an arrow thudded into the tree beside Elena's head. Ambush! Zareth roared. Figures burst from the tree-reen. Rebels, their eyes glowing gold, their teeth bared. Elena's horse reared, throwing her into the snow. Elena! Magnus's voice was a thunderclap. He shifted mid-leap, his massive black wolf form colliding with an attacker and tearing him apart in a spray of blood. Elena scrambled for cover, her heart hammering. A rebel lunged toward her, blade raised, only for Zareth to intercept, driving his dagger into the man's chest. Get up, Zareth barked, dragging her to her feet. More arrows flew. Elena ducked behind a fallen log, hands trembling. She remembered Zarith's lessons, his words echoing in her mind. Hesitation kills. When a rebel broke through the chaos, charging at her with a snarl, Elena seized a discarded bow. She fumbled an arrow into place, drew, and loosed the shaft buried itself in the rebel's shoulder, sending him staggering. Not a kill, but enough to save her life. Moments later, the last of the attackers fled into the trees. The snow was stained crimson. Magnus shifted back, blood streaking his jaw. He strode toward her, eyes wild. "You are hurt." Elena shook her head quickly. "No, I'm fine." His gaze fell on the bow still in her hands. For a moment, his expression softened, pride flickering beneath the fury. Good. Then his jaw hardened. They grow bolder. Someone inside feeds them information. The words sent a chill through Elenena's blood. Someone within the fortress wanted her dead badly enough to risk open treason. That evening, the fortress hall was alive with whispers of the attack. Wolves eyed Elena with open suspicion, some muttering that her presence invited danger. Elena stepped into the center of the hall, silencing them with her voice. "You question me?" she said clearly. "You wonder if a human Luna will bring you ruin. Today I was attacked because of who I am, and yet I still stand before you alive." The crowd stirred. Callista smirked from the shadows, but Elena pressed on. "I will not run. I will not cower. I swore to be your Luna when I bled, my hand beside your king, and I swear now I will stand beside him, whether in peace or in war." Her words echoed through the hall. For a moment there was silence. Then a few wolves growled low in approval. Others muttered uneasily. Magnus's gaze locked on her, unreadable. At last, he rose from his throne. "You heard her," he said. "She is Luna. Defy her and you defy me." The hall erupted, some in reluctant acceptance, others in defiance. But Elena saw it just a flicker in a few faces. A seed of respect had been planted. Later, when they were alone, Magnus studied her. "You spoke well." Elena met his gaze. "I meant every word." His lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile. Then perhaps you will survive after all." A week later, Elena found herself in the Moon Priestess's chambers, summoned by Magnus without explanation. The room smelled of herbs and smoke. Candles flickered, casting long shadows across ancient tapestries. The priestess, an old woman with pale eyes clouded by time, studied Elena with unsettling intensity. "This is the human bride," she rasped. "She is Luna," Magnus corrected. The priestess ignored him, reaching out to take Elena's hands and her gnarled fingers. "Yes, I see it now. The mark of prophet. Know this. The fate of wolves and men alike rests on the choices you make." Elena's pulse quickened. The weight of the words pressed down on her chest. When they left the chamber, Magnus walked beside her in silence. "At last," he said, "do not let her fill your head with nonsense." "Is it nonsense?" Elena asked quietly. His expression darkened, but he did not answer. For the first time, Elena wondered if her presence here was not only the price of peace, but the key to something far greater. The moon was full when Magnus summoned Elena to the highest tower. The air was cold and sharp, the night heavy with anticipation. She found him waiting, stripped of his cloak, silver eyes glowing in the moonlight. A brazier burned between them, its smoke curling into the sky. "What is this?" she asked, though her heart already knew. "The marking," Magnus said. His voice was low, solemn. The bond between mates is not complete until one leaves their mark. Without it, wolves will never truly see you as mine. Elena's breath caught. You mean a bite? Magnus stepped closer, towering over her. Not to harm, to bind. Through it, we share more than words. Strength, emotion, power. She hesitated, searching his face. And if I refuse, then they will always see you as fragile prey, he said bluntly, and they will keep trying to kill you. Silence stretched between them. Elena felt the cold bite of fear, and yet beneath it, something warmer. Dangerous. At last, she lifted her chin. Then do it! Magnus's silver gaze burned. He took her gently, one hand cradling her neck. His lips brushed her skin just above her collarbone. For a moment, the intimacy stole her breath. Then, his teeth sank into her flesh, not cruelly, but firmly, with an aching fire that spread through her body. She gasped, clutching his shoulders as warmth rushed through her veins. A flood of sensations followed, not just pain, but a pulse of strength, a whisper of his emotions. Fury, yes, but also fierce protectiveness, and beneath it all, loneliness sharp as a blade. When he withdrew, blood marked her skin, but already the wound began to seal. His gaze met hers, raw and unguarded. You are mine, he said. Elena's heart raced, but her voice was steady. And you are mine. The words sealed what the bite had begun. The wolves howled outside the tower, their voices carrying across the night. The Luna was no longer just human. She was marked. The days after the marking felt different. Elena could sense Magnus in ways she hadn't before. She felt the weight of his anger in council, the steel of his command in battle, and sometimes, when his gaze lingered on her too long, the heat of desire that made her cheeks flush. One evening, she found herself in his chambers after another grueling day of training. Her muscles ached, her patience thin. Magnus studied her silently, as if debating something. You've changed, he said at last. I've had to. He stepped closer, his hand brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Not many would survive as you have. You should know that. Elena's chest tightened. Survival is not enough, is it? If I am to remain Luna, I must be more than that. Magnus's lips curved faintly. Yes, and you are becoming more. The silence stretched, charged. His hand lingered at her jaw, his silver eyes unreadable. Slowly, as though giving her time to pull away, he bent his head. His mouth met hers with unexpected gentleness. For a moment, Elena froze. Then the warmth of it, the hunger beneath, broke her restraint. She kissed him back, fingers curling against his chest. The fire between them was undeniable. The bond tugged at her, demanding closeness, demanding trust. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. Magnus's thumb brushed her lip. You are not prey, he murmured. Never again. And for the first time, Elena believed him. The next council gathering brought grim news. Zerth spread a map across the table, his expression tight. The Shadow Pack gathers in the east, he reported. They raid border villages, claiming Magnus has weakened us by taking a human Luna. Murmurs filled the hall. Elder Vera looked smug. What did I say? Wolves sense weakness. Magnus's hands slammed down on the table, silencing them. The Shadow Pack has always been vultures. They circle when they think we are distracted, but they will find I am not so easily broken. Elena studied the map. They use me as an excuse, she said quietly. If I weren't here, they would find another reason. Magnus's gaze softened slightly as he looked at her. Correct. Their hunger is power, not truth. Callista, lounging with her usual disdain, gave a sharp laugh, and yet they rally more wolves than ever. Perhaps they are right. Our king is blinded by a pretty face. Elena's jaw tightened, but before she could answer, Magnus's growl rumbled through Thay. Watch your tongue, Callista. The wolfess tilted her head mockingly. Or what? Will you kill me as you've killed so many challengers before? Or will you let your Luna fight for you now? The tension in the hall was palpable. For the first time, Elena saw it clearly. Callista wasn't just jealous. She wanted to challenge the crown itself, and she would not wait much longer. It happened 2 nights later. The fortress courtyard was crowded, wolves gathering as word spread. Callista stood in the center, her fiery hair blazing under torchlight, her green eyes bright with hunger. I challenge the Luna, she shouted. Her voice rang across the stones. By ancient law, I claim the right to test her strength. If she fails, she forfeits her place. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elena's stomach dropped, but she forced herself forward. Meeting Callista's gaze, Magnus's growl thundered across the courtyard. This is madness. She is Luna by my choice. And by our law, Callista cut him off. Her grin sharp, she must prove herself. Or is she too fragile to fight? The wolves murmured restless, eager for blood. Elena's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed to refuse, but she remembered Magnus's words. If you show weakness, they will tear you apart. She stepped forward, her voice steady. I accept. Magnus's head snapped toward her, silver eyes blazing. Elena, I must, she said softly but firmly. If I do not, they will never respect me. Not truly. For a long moment, his jaw clenched as though he might forbid it. But at last, he stepped back, his fury barely leashed. Then fight, Callista purred. She shifted smoothly into her wolf form, a massive beast with russet fur and glowing green eyes. Elena stood in the center of the courtyard, the weight of every gaze upon her. She was not wolf. She had only her training, her wits, and her will. But she would not cower, not tonight. The courtyard erupted as Callista lunged, her claws raking the air where Elena had stood a moment before. Elena dove aside, rolling across the stones. The sting of Grace's in sharp but ignorable. Zareth's voice echoed from the crowd. Use your speed, not strength, Callista snarled, circling. Her wolf form was massive muscle and fury. But Elena remembered Zareth's lessons. Never meet a wolf head on. Outsmart them. She seized a spear from the weapons rack, its weight steadying her trembling hands. Callista lunged again. This time, Elena sidestepped, driving the butt of the spear into the wolfess ribs. The impact sent Callista staggering. The Yai crowd roared. Fury burned in Callista's eyes as she whirled, slashing. Claws tore through Elena's arm, hot blood spilling down her sleeve. Pain nearly stole her breath, but she gritted her teeth. Magnus stepped forward instinctively, but Elena shot him a glance, a silent plea. Don't. She would win or fall on her own. Callista charged again, jaws snapping. At the last instant, Elena dropped low, driving the spear into the ground. And letting Callista's momentum carry her forward, the wolfess slammed into it, yelping as the shaft bruised her chest. Elena rose quickly, pressing the weapon to Callista's throat. Her arm bled, her body ached, but her voice was steady. Yield for a moment's silence. Callista's green eyes blazed with hatred, but at last she shifted back into human form, blood at her lip, pride shattered. I yield, she spat. The courtyard exploded in howls and shouts. Some cheered, some murmured in disbelief. Magnus's gaze never left Elena. Pride, relief, and something deeper burned in his eyes. Elena lowered the spear, her body trembling. She had survived. More than that, she had won. Callista staggered away, her head bowed in humiliation. For now, her challenge was ended. Elena stood, breath ragged but her spine unbroken. She was Luna, not by Magnus's decree alone, but by her own strength. And for the first time, the wolves howled her name, not in scorn, but in recognition. The morning after her victory over Callista, the fortress was alive with whispers. Wherever Elena walked, wolves paused, bowing their heads. Some murmured her name in awe. Others glared with grudging respect. Zareth found her in the training yard, her wounded arm bound tightly in linen. You did what no one thought possible, he said, pride flickering in his eyes. Elena managed a weary smile. I only survived. You more than survived, Zareth replied. You earned their recognition. They'll think twice before doubting you again. Before she could answer, Elder Vera appeared, her gnarled staff tapping against the stones. Her sharp eyes lingered on the bandage. Strength is proven, but strength must be kept. You cannot falter, Luna. Every wound you carry is a wound wolves will test. Elena inclined her head. Then I'll heal quickly. Later that day, Magnus summoned her to the council hall. His silver gaze swept the gathered wolves. Callista's challenges ended. Elena is Luna, not by decree, but by law and strength. Let no one dispute it again. Some bowed, others scowled, but none dared object. Elena caught Callista's eyes from across the chamber. The once proud wolfess sat silent, her lip curled in bitterness. She had yielded, but Elena knew her defeat did not mean surrender. As the council adjourned, Magnus drew Elena aside. You've silenced them for now, but wolves are restless. The shadow pack grows bolder. We cannot delay action much longer. Elena's heart tightened. Respect had been won, but peace was still far away. The alarm bells tolled before dawn. Elena woke to shouts echoing through the fortress halls. She threw on her cloak and rushed outside, where Zareth was already barking orders. Smoke curled in the distance, staining the horizon. Raiders, he told her grimly. Shadow wolves struck a border village. They left nothing but ash. Her stomach twisted. Survivors, few. They took prisoners, likely to send a message. Magnus appeared, his eyes blazing like molten silver. Gather the war band. We ride within the hour. The fortress surged into motion. Wolves armed themselves, snarling for blood. Elena found herself standing among them, her pulse racing. You should remain here, Magnus told her quietly, his hand gripping her arm. It will be dangerous. She lifted her chin. If I'm Luna, then I stand with you. Or do you mean to hide me again, as if I cannot bear the sight of war? Magnus studied her, torn between fury and reluctant admiration. Finally, he released her. Then ride at my side, but do not disobey me. The war band thundered into the forest, paws and hooves churning the earth. When they reached the village, the devastation was worse than Zareth had described. Charred homes smoldered. Bodies lay scattered in the ruins. Wolves moved cautiously through the ashes, searching for signs of life. Elena dismounted, her throat tight. A child whimpered from beneath a collapsed roof. She dropped to her knees, pulling debris away, until she uncovered a boy no older than 7, bloodied but alive. The boy clung to her desperately. "They took my sister," he sobbed. Elena's heart broke. She glanced at Magnus, who stood surveying the carnage with cold fury. "We'll find her," she promised the boy softly, though she had no idea how. Magnus raised his voice. "The Shadow Pack thinks fear will weaken us, but fear will be their undoing. We will answer this blood with blood." The war band howled in reply, their voices fierce against the smoke-filled sky. Back at the fortress, the council convened again, this time with anger simmering like a storm. "They took prisoners," Zaneth reported. "They will use them as leverage, perhaps even sacrifice them under the blood moon." Elder Vera's eyes gleamed with warning. If they call upon the old rites, the bond between packs may shatter entirely. War will spread. Callista finally spoke, her voice dripping with scorn. "And still we waste time. If our king were not distracted by his human pet, Magnus's roar silenced her. Enough." His power rippled through the hall, forcing heads to bow. "Question me again, and you will not rise from the floor." Callista smirked faintly, but she said no more. Later, in the quiet of their chambers, Elena confronted Magnus. "She will never stop. Callista hates me too much." Magnus's gaze softened, though his voice was grim. "Hatred I can handle. Betrayal is what I fear." That night, Elena overheard whispers in the corridor. Wolves speaking in hushed tones, too quiet for ordinary ears. But since the marking, she sensed more, heard more. "She grows stronger," one muttered. "If the Shadow Pack promises freedom, perhaps they are right." "Careful," the other hissed. "The king will kill traitors." Elena's blood ran cold. Treachery was already festering within the fortress walls. Preparations for the blood. Moonfeast began despite the tension. It was an ancient tradition meant to honor unity among packs. But this year, unity was fragile. Elena watched as the great hall was draped in crimson banners, torches blazing against the stone. Wolves whispered of omens of blood spilled under moonlight. Zareth approached her while servants arranged the tables. "You'll be seated at Magnus's right hand. Every eye will be on you. If you falter, they will whisper weakness again." "Won't falter," she said firmly, though her stomach churned. When the feast began, wolves filled the hall with laughter and growls, their voices echoing under the vaulted ceiling. Meat roasted over great fires, wine flowed, and yet beneath the revelry, unease lingered. Callista sat across the hall, her emerald eyes fixed on Elena with poisonous intent. Elder Vera muttered to Magnus about omens, while Zareth kept scanning the crowd for threats. Halfway through the feast, a messenger burst into the hall. Pale and breathless, the Shadow Pack moves. They march under the blood moon itself. Chaos erupted. Wolves surged to their feet, growling. Magnus's command cut through the den. "Enough. Sit." His silver eyes burned as he looked around the hall. "They want fear. We will give them nothing but steel." Elena stood slowly, her voice steady, though her hands trembled. "Then let them come. We are not prey, and we will not cower." The hall fell silent. Wolves stared at her, some shocked, some grudgingly impressed. At last, Zareth lifted his goblet. To the Luna, the toast spread, hesitant at first, then stronger. To the Luna, Elena's heart pounded, but she did not falter. She was no longer the offering of peace. She was Magnus's equal, and wolves were beginning to see it. The night of the blood moon rose heavy and crimson. From the fortress walls, Elena saw the torches of the Shadow Pack flickering in the distance like a sea of fireflies. Magnus stood beside her, his hand resting lightly at her back. They come in numbers, but numbers are nothing against unity. You gave them reason to stand with you tonight. Elena swallowed hard. Do you believe we'll win? His silver gaze met hers unflinching. I do not believe. I know. Zareth approached grim as ever. Scouts report. They move quickly. At dawn, they will be here. Magnus nodded. Then we prepare. Arm every wolf, bar every gate. He turned to Elena, his expression softer. Stay within the fortress when the battle begins. I will not risk losing you. She shook her head. I will not hide. I can help. No, he cut her off, his voice fierce. You are Luna, not a soldier. If they take you, everything collapses. Her heart twisted. She wanted to fight to prove herself again, but she also knew the truth in his words. As the fortress braced for war, Elena stood at the battlements, the crimson moon painting the world in blood. Somewhere in the darkness, prisoners waited, including the little boy's sister. Somewhere in the distance, the Shadow Pack prepared to tear them apart. She gripped the stone rail, whispering to herself, we will not break, not tonight. And when dawn came, neither she nor Magnus would ever be the same. The fortress throbbed with restless energy. Wolves sharpened blades, adjusted armor, and whispered prayers to the moon. The crimson light painted their faces, turning them into shadows themselves. Elena walked among them, her cloak brushing the stone floor. She stopped at the sight of the young boy she had rescued, seated by the fires. He clutched a wooden cup, eyes wide with fear. Sarah stood nearby, arms folded. He should be far from here, Elena murmured. Sarah shook his head. He refuses to leave until his sister is found. The boy has wolf blood, though faint. Stubbornness runs in his veins. Elena crouched before the boy. What's your name? Orin, he whispered. She touched his shoulder gently. Stay close to Zareth. When this is over, I'll bring your sister back. The promise burned her tongue. It was dangerous to make, but she could not bear the hollow look in his eyes. Magnus found her then, armored in black leather that gleamed beneath the torches. His presence stilled the murmurs around them. It is time, he said simply. The war drums began to pound, echoing through the valley. Wolves shifted into their forms, snarls rising into the night. Elena felt her heart quicken, her palms damp. Magnus leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. Do not break. They will look to you as much as to me. Her chin lifted. Then I'll give them strength. And when the gates opened, the fortress spilled into the forest like a river of steel and fur, heading toward the battlefield, bathed in blood-red moonlight. The battlefield stretched wide, a clearing scarred by ash and the skeletal remains of burned trees. Across the expanse, the Shadow Pack waited, their numbers vast, their howls tearing the night apart. Elena stood on the ridge beside Magnus, her pulse thundering. She had never seen so many wolves in one place, snarling and stamping, eyes glowing like embers. They want fear, Magnus growled, his voice carrying to his warriors. But fear belongs to prey. Tonight, we are predators. A roar of approval swept through their ranks. Wolves shifted, massive forms shaking the ground as they surged forward. The clash was chaos, fang against fang, steel against flesh. Elena remained where Magnus commanded, high upon the ridge, though every instinct screamed at her to move. She saw Zareth cutting through the enemy with brutal precision, his blade flashing under the moon. Callista was a storm of claws and fury, tearing wolves apart as if to prove she was no coward. Then Elena's eyes caught on a group of shadow wolves dragging prisoners into the treine. But his attention was fixed on the opposing alpha who stood across the field, a massive black wolf with scars across his muzzle. "I will face their alpha. Stay here, Magnus." He was already shifting his form, exploding into a monstrous silver wolf, larger than any around him. The ground trembled as he charged. Elena's gaze darted back to the fleeing prisoners. Her promise to Orin screamed in her chest. She couldn't stay still. She grabbed a dagger from a fallen wolf and sprinted into the chaos. Branches tore at her cloak as Elena plunged into the trees. Ahead, 3 shadow wolves dragged a group of captives, their snarls echoing through the night. Among them was a little girl with tangled hair, Orin's sister. "Stop!" Elena shouted, brandishing the dagger. The wolves turned, grinning at the human Luna, who dared face them. One sneered. "The king's pet strays too far." Fear clawed at her throat. But she steadied her grip. "Release them or bleed for it." The first wolf lunged. Elena dodged, slashing wildly. The blade grazed his shoulder, making him howl. Another wolf circled, ready to strike. Suddenly, Zareth burst from the shadows, his sword cleaving through one attacker in a single stroke. "Fool, woman," he growled, positioning himself between her and the others. "Magnus will kill me if you die." "Then don't let me die," she shot back, breathless. Together they fought, steel and courage, against fang and claw. Zareth killed one wolf, and Elena managed to drive her dagger into another's throat. Blood sprayed hot and shocking. She staggered, but the girl broke free and ran into her arms. "Orin," the child sobbed. Elena held her close, trembling. Zareth grabbed her arm. "We need to return now." But as they turned back, a new howl split the night. Low, guttural, wrong. From the darkness emerged a massive wolf, his fur black as pitch, eyes glowing red, unlike the others. This one wryer of something twisted. Zareth's face hardened. ... That is no ordinary wolf. And as it lunged, Elena realized they faced something bred of shadow and sorcery. The beast struck like lightning, knocking Zareth off his feet. Elena barely rolled aside, clutching the girl protectively. Its red eyes locked on her, filled with hunger. Zareth staggered up, blood dripping from his mouth. "Run! I won't leave you," Elena shouted, though terror gripped her. The monster lunged again, but Zareth met it head-on, his blade sparking as it struck the creature's hide. "It's armored," he grunted, "not natural." Elena scanned desperately, spotting a broken spear among the dead. She shoved the girl behind a fallen log. "Stay there," she ordered, before racing to grab the weapon. Zareth was being overwhelmed, his strikes deflecting uselessly. The beast pinned him, jaws snapping for his throat. "No!" Elena screamed. She hurled the spear with all her strength. It pierced the creature's flank, making it howl in fury. Magnus arrived in that moment, his silver form crashing into the monster with devastating force. The ground shook as Alpha and Abomination collided, fangs tearing, claws raking. "Take the child," Zareth barked, dragging Elena back. "Magnus will handle it." But Elena couldn't look away. The monster fought like nothing she had seen, refusing to fall, even against Magnus. Blood sprayed, and for the first time, she saw fear flicker in Magnus's silver eyes. Finally, with a savage twist, Magnus tore out the creature's throat. It collapsed, oozing black blood that hissed into the earth like acid. Panting, Magnus shifted back, his body streaked with blood. That was no wolf, he growled. That was witchcraft. Elena clutched the girl tightly, her heart pounding. Then the Shadow Pack has more than numbers on their side, and the war had only just begun. By dawn, the battlefield was strewn with corpses. The Shadow Pack had retreated, leaving their dead behind. The fortress wolves howled their victory, but the air rare of loss. Elena stood amid the carnage, holding Orin and his sister. Their tears soaked her cloak, but she whispered gently, "You're safe now." Zereth approached, limping, his face grim. "We won the night, but the cost was steep. Dozens are dead, more wounded, and that creature." He shook his head. "We've never faced its like." Magnus joined them, his expression a mask of cold fury. This was only their first move. They tested us. His eyes locked on Elena. "And you? Why did you disobey me?" "I saved the children," she said firmly, though her voice trembled. "Would you have me sit idle while they were dragged away?" His jaw clenched, torn between rage and reluctant respect. At last, he pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "You'll be the death of me, Elena White." Round them, wolves tended to the wounded, carried their dead. Callista stalked past, her lip curling. "So the Luna risks all for human brats? How noble!" Elena ignored her. Instead, she looked at Magnus, her heart heavy. "This is only the beginning, isn't it?" Magnus's silver eyes burned with grim certainty. "Yes, and next time they won't just send monsters. They'll send an army." The blood moon faded, but its omen lingered. Victory had been won, but peace was nowhere in sight. The fortress gates closed behind the returning warriors, and silence descended. The kind of silence only death could bring. Elena walked through the courtyard, her cloak torn and her hands streaked with blood not her own. Wolves limped, groaned, or were carried in on stretchers. Others were silent, their bodies draped in cloth, their faces hidden from the grieving. Magnus strode ahead of them, his expression carved from stone. His silver eyes betrayed nothing, but Elena felt the rage simmering beneath his skin. Yet something about it gnawed at him, an enemy he couldn't predict. Zereth fell in step beside her, bandaged across the ribs. "We held the field, but it doesn't feel like victory," he muttered. "It isn't," Elena said softly. "Not when so many will never rise again." Orin clung to her hand, his sister nestled against her hip. They hadn't let go since the rescue. Magnus noticed, his gaze hardening. "They are not your responsibility," he said, his tone sharper than intended. "They are packed now," Elena countered, her chin rising. "Unless you mean to cast them out." The murmurs of nearby wolves caught on her words. Some nodded, some sneered. Callista was among them, her arms crossed. "The Luna grows bold," she said smoothly. "We'll see if she can shoulder the weight she's so eager to claim." Elena met her stare without flinching. Better to shoulder it than to stand aside and mock those who try. The tension snapped through the courtyard, but Magnus's growl silenced it. "Enough." His voice thundered. "Mourn the fallen, tend the wounded. This war is not finished." As the pack dispersed, Elena felt the shift in the air. Victory had not united them. It had divided them further. The morning peas burned through the night. Wolves gathered in silence, their heads bowed as the flames consumed the bodies of their kin. Elena stood among them, her arm linked with Magnus's, though his grip was iron. He had refused to leave her side, perhaps to keep her in place, perhaps to anchor himself. She couldn't tell. Zareth stepped forward to speak for the fallen warriors. His voice was hoarse-raw but steady. They died with teeth bared and blades in hand. The moon welcomes them, but we will not forget. The pack howled low and mournful, a sound that made Elena's heart ache. She looked at the flames, the smoke curling into the blood-red sky, and whispered a silent promise to the dead. I will not waste your sacrifice. Beside her, Callista shifted closer, her voice a quiet hiss. You think these wolves truly see you as Luna? They see a human who meddled where she shouldn't. You nearly cost Zareth his life chasing after prisoners. Elena's jaw clenched. And yet those children live. Callista's smile was sharp. Children don't win wars. Before Elena could answer, Magnus's voice cut in low and dangerous. Walk away, Callista. Callista bowed mockingly and melted into the crowd. Elena felt Magnus' hand tighten on hers. Do not waste your fire on her, he said. She undermines you, Elena replied. She undermines us. Magnus's gaze lingered on the flames. She is still of my bloodline, but I am watching her, and so was Elena. Days passed. The fortress worked to heal, mending walls, sharpening weapons, burying its dead. But the cracks beneath the surface spread like rot. Magnus convened his war council in the Great Hall. Elena sat at his right hand. Though Callista's glare made it clear she thought Elena had no place there. Sarah stood behind Magnus, ever watchful. The Shadow Pack will not stop, Magnus said, his voice cold. They test our strength. They seek to break us before they strike with full force. We must prepare. Callista scoffed lightly. We must also question why so many of our wolves fall under your command, brother. Perhaps the pack would fare better under leadership. Not so. She let the word hang. Magnus's eyes snapped to her, silver blazing. Finish it. Callista leaned forward, unflinching. Not so cursed. The hall erupted in murmurs. Elena's stomach turned cold. She had heard the whispers. Magnus is cursed, the prophecy of his downfall. But never had anyone dared say it to his face in council. Zareth's hand went to his sword. Careful, Callista. Magnus raised a hand, silencing the room. His stare never left his sister. You tread on treason. Callista smiled sweetly. I tread on truth. The curse has cost us already. How many more before the pack breaks entirely? Elena cut in, her voice ringing clear. And what would you do, Callista? Lead them yourself? You think claws and arrogance make a leader? Leadership is sacrifice, not spite. The room stilled. Callista's smile faltered, but she quickly masked it. Perhaps the human Luna should remember her place. Elena held her gaze unwavering. I know my place at Magnus's side, at this pack's side, which is more than I can say for you. Magnus rose, his presence filling the hall. Enough! Council dismissed. As wolves filed out, Callista lingered. Her eyes met Elena's, and for the first time, Elena saw not disdain, but calculation. Callista was planning something. That night, Magnus couldn't sleep. He paced the chambers, his body tense, his eyes shadowed. Elena watched him from the bed, worry gnawing at her. You're thinking of her words. They are poison, he muttered. But poison spreads. Then let me share the burden. If you shut me out, the whispers will grow louder. He stopped turning to her. His face softened just slightly. You do not know what weight you ask to carry. Then tell me, she pressed. Tell me about the curse." His jaw tightened. For a long moment, she thought he would refuse. But then he spoke, voice low. "The curse was spoken the night I took the Alpha's throne. A seer claimed I would be undone, not by my enemies, but by the one I loved most." Elilenena's breath caught. "You think me?" His hand cupped her face, rough and trembling. "I don't want to, but every day you stand beside me, every time you defy death itself, I see the prophecy sharpening its claws." Tears stung her eyes, but she forced her voice steady. "Then let us prove it wrong. Prophecies bind only those who surrender to them." Magnus's lips met hers, desperate and fierce. "If you fall, Elena, the world burns." She held him tightly, whispering against his lips, "Then don't let me fall." Outside, unseen, Callista listened in the shadows, her eyes glittering. The prophecy was real, and it could be used. The following morning, Elena gathered the children in the courtyard, tending to their needs and speaking softly to the wounded who passed by. Wolves watched her, some with suspicion, but others with gratitude. Slowly, she was weaving herself into the fabric of the pack. Callista approached, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "How touching playing nursemaid while warriors sharpen their claws." Elena looked up calm. "Every warrior fights better knowing their family is safe. This is war, Callista. It's fought with blades, but also with care." Callista smirked, leaning closer. "Care won't save you when the Shadow Pack tears down these walls. And when Magnus falls to his curse, who will protect you then?" Elena didn't flinch. "I will protect myself and the pack." Callista's smile widened, though her eyes were cold. "We'll see." Later that night, Callista slipped into the forest, her cloak trailing like smoke. There, at the edge of the dark woods, a figure waited, cloaked, masked, his eyes glowing faintly red. "You caught it!" came, the figure rasped. Callista's lips curved. "I told you I would." Magnus grows weaker by the day. His human Luna sows doubt. It is time the Shadow Pack's true alpha claimed what should be his. The figure's grin was sharp and cruel. "Then betray your blood, and you shall have power beyond your brother's cursed reign." Callista extended her hand. "Then we have a bargain." And with that treachery took root in the heart of the fortress. The fortress grew restless. Whispers spread through the halls like wildfire. And though Magnus stood as tall as ever, his silver gaze seemed darker, his silences heavier. Wolves avoided meeting his eyes, as if afraid the curse Callista had named would strike them for staring too long. Elena noticed the change most of all. He slept less, ate little, seen, and often retreated to the training yard long after the others had gone to rest. His strikes against the practice dummies were savage, relentless, as though he fought ghosts that no one else could see. Zareth sought Elena one evening as she tended to the children. "The pack is fraying," he said quietly, his tone low so that Orin and his sister couldn't overhear. "They fear the prophecy. Some already whisper that Callista speaks the truth." Elena glanced around the courtyard, noting how the wolf's eyes slid away from Magnus as he passed. "And what do you believe?" she asked. Zareth's jaw tightened. "I believe in Magnus, but belief doesn't silence doubt. If he falters, the pack will splinter." Elena's fingers curled into fists. "Then I won't let him falter. Not to the curse, not to Callista." That night, when Magnus returned to their chambers, she found him pacing again. His hands trembled, though he clenched them tight. "You're hiding something from me," Elena said. "Something more than the prophecy." Magnus froze, his broad shoulders tense. "There are things you cannot understand." "Then teach me," she pressed. "Don't shut me out." For a heartbeat, he looked ready to give in. Then his face hardened, and he turned away. "Sleep, Elena." But she did not sleep. Not when the man she loved was unraveling before her eyes. Callista moved like a shadow through the fortress. Smiles during the day, whispers at night. She knew which warriors were grieving, which doubted, which longed for someone to blame. And she gave them answers soft as poison. It was during a sparring session that Zereth confronted her. "I see what you're doing," he growled, circling her with a blade in hand. Callista smirked, her sword clashing against his. "What's that, cousin? Training my claws sharper than yours?" "You're feeding the fire," Zereth snapped, driving her back with a heavy strike. "Magnus already has enough enemies beyond the—" "You'd give him more inside." Parried and twisted, her blade pressing near his throat. "Perhaps this pack deserves a leader who doesn't drag them toward ruin." Zereth shoved her back, his eyes blazing. "That ruin has kept us alive. Betray him and you'll answer to me." Callista only laughed, the sound sharp. "You'll be too late, Zereth. You always are." That evening, a supply wagon returning from a border village was found burned to ash, its escort slaughtered. The survivors swore they had seen one of their own guiding the shadow pack through the forest. When Magnus questioned them, Elena noticed his gaze flick briefly to Callista. She stood serene, her hands folded, her lips curving ever so slightly. The council gathered once more. Wolves argued, voices rising like thunder. "We cannot survive another raid," one snarled. "Perhaps we should parley with the shadow pack," another muttered. "Better death than surrender." Magnus stood silent at the head of the table, his hands gripping the carved wood hard enough to crack it. His silence only fueled the chaos. At last, Elena rose. Enough. Her voice cut through the noise. The room stilled, all eyes turning to her. "We bury our dead. We heal our wounded. And we protect what is ours," she said, her tone firm. "If you've forgotten what loyalty means, then you don't belong here." A ripple of unease went through the wolves, but no one dared speak. Zereth's lips twitched in approval, though he said nothing. Callista's smile, however, was bright with mockery. Spoken like a Luna who thinks words can shield us from claws. Elena ignored her. "Magnus leads you, and if you cannot follow him, then follow me. But make your choice now, because hesitation will cost more lives than our enemy ever could." Her words lingered long after the council dismissed. That night, when the courtyard emptied, Zereth approached her. "You did well," he said, "but you've put a target on your back. Callista won't forget today." Elena met his gaze steadily. "Then let her try. I won't be silent while she poisons this pack." But when she returned to her chambers, she found Magnus seated in the shadows, his eyes glowing faintly, unnaturally bright. "Don't fight for me, Elena," he murmured, his voice low, almost broken. "Fight for yourself, because when the curse takes me, I won't know friend from foe." The first sign came during training. Magnus sparred with 3 warriors, his movements fluid, ruthless. But then his strikes turned savage, his growls deeper, feral. When one warrior faltered, Magnus's claws lengthened, his teeth snapping dangerously close to the wolf's throat. "Magnus!" Zereth shouted, leaping between them. For a moment, Magnus didn't recognize him. His eyes glowed silver white, his breathing ragged. Only Elena's voice broke through. "Magnus, stop!" His gaze flicked to her, confusion warring with fury. Slowly, his claws receded. His breathing steadied, but the damage was done. The pack had seen their alpha lose control. Whispers spread faster than wildfire. The curse is real. The alpha is turning. He will destroy us all. That night, Elena held him as he sat trembling, his hands buried in his hair. "I felt it," he whispered. "Something inside me clawing, tearing. His voice cracked. "I almost killed my own men." Elena gripped his face, forcing him to look at her. "You are stronger than this curse. You are Magnus, alpha of this pack. Do you hear me? I won't let it take you." His lips brushed her forehead. And if it takes me anyway," her answer was steady. "Then I'll drag you back, no matter how deep it pulls." Unseen, Callista watched from the shadows, her lips curling in triumph. The curse was real, and the pack's faith would soon crumble completely. The raid came at dawn. Howls split the forest, and the shadow pack struck like lightning, cutting down centuries before the alarm even rang. Elena rushed into the courtyard, sword in hand. Wolves clashed. Steel met claws. Blood stained the stones. Magnus led the charge, a storm of fury and strength, but his eyes burned too bright, his strikes too wild. Elena's heart pounded as she cut down an enemy wolf, keeping one eye always on him. And then she saw him, the enemy alpha, a towering figure cloaked in black fur, his eyes glowing red. His presence alone made the air heavy, his aura dark and suffocating. He laughed as he met Magnus in the center of the battlefield. "So this is the cursed alpha, the one doomed by love." Magnus roared, their clash shaking the courtyard walls. Steel and claw struck, sparks flying. Elena froze, realization slamming into her. The Shadow Alpha's words weren't taunts, they were knowledge. He knew of the prophecy. Zareth fought his way to her side, blood streaking his cheek. "He's not just another alpha," he said grimly. "That monster, he's something more." And as Magnus faltered, his curse clawing for control, Elena understood. This was the true enemy. The Shadow Alpha hadn't come to destroy the fortress. He had come to break Magnus, and through him, the prophecy itself. The courtyard was chaos. Wolves tore into one another, the clang of steel and the cries of the wounded filling the air. Elena fought her way through, blades slick with blood, her eyes never leaving Magnus. He and the Shadow Alpha clashed like storms colliding. Sparks burst from every strike, claws and steel tearing into stone walls, breaking weapons as though they were kindling. Yet Magnus's burned brighter with every blow, the curse surging. His movements grew erratic. "Savage, Magnus!" Elena shouted, slashing down an enemy wolf as she tried to reach him, but he didn't hear her. His roar shook the ground, and for a terrifying heartbeat, she saw his form blur, fur rippling unnaturally, his body twisting between wolf and something else. Zareth cut down a foe and caught her. "We have to fall back." "No, Elena," said firmly, wrenching free. "If we leave him, he'll lose himself completely." Across the battlefield, Callista watched with eyes alike. She had not joined the fight, not lifted a blade for her pack. Instead, her lips curved in satisfaction as Magnus staggered, the curse clawing deeper with every strike. The Shadow Alpha laughed as he drove Magnus to his knees. "The curse eats at you, doesn't it? You're mine, wolf. You'll destroy everything you love before I even raise a claw. Magnus's snarl was inhuman, his claws raking stone as he struggled to rise. Elena's heart clenched. She couldn't lose him, not like this. The battle raged long into the night. The fortress walls shook. Fires licked the sky, and the pack fought desperately to hold their ground. Zareth led a group of warriors to flank the enemy, while Elena pushed through the chaos toward Magnus. But she stopped short when a familiar voice rose above the clash of steel. "Retreat!" Callista's cry rang out. Wolves hesitated, looking to her as though she were their alpha. "No!" Elena shouted. "Stand and fight!" But hesitation was fatal. The Shadow Pack surged forward, cutting down those who faltered. And in that moment of weakness, Elena saw it. Callista moving among the enemy, her blade turned not against them, but against her own kin. She struck down a distracted warrior, then another. Her betrayal laid bare. "Traitor!" Zareth roared as he saw her. Fury consumed him as he cut his way toward her, his sword dripping blood. Callista only smiled coldly. "At last, you see clearly, cousin. Magnus is doomed, and with him, this pack. Better to side with the victor than die for a cursed alpha." Zareth's rage shook him. "You've condemned your own blood for power. You're no wolf. You're carrying." Callista's smirk deepened. "Then strike me down if you dare, or admit you don't have the strength." Their blades clashed, cousin against cousin, steel ringing with every step. Elena, torn between them and Magnus's collapsing battle, screamed inwardly. Every second wasted brought them closer to ruin. Magnus stumbled, his vision swimming, the Shadow Alpha's laughter echoing in his head. The curse coiled like a serpent through his veins. Each heartbeat heavier, hotter, until rage consumed reason. "Fight me, wolf," the Shadow Alpha bellowed, his claws raking Magnus's chest. Magnus roared, but the sound was twisted, monstrous. His body convulsed, fur erupting across his skin, but not as a wolf, as something wrong, something darker. Elena forced her way forward. "Magnus," she cried, "look at me." For a heartbeat, his glowing eyes met hers. Recognition flickered, but the curse snarled, drowning it out. His claws lashed, not at the Shadow Alpha, but at her. Zareth, breaking from his clash with Callista, shoved Elena aside just in time. Magnus's strike tore through his arm instead, blood spraying the stones. "Elena, go!" Zareth growled through clenched teeth, staggering but standing firm. Hell, tears blurred her vision, but she shook her head. "No, I won't leave him." The Shadow Alpha loomed, his crimson eyes gleaming. "See, he is mine already. He will spill his own pack's blood until none remain." Magnus shuddered, torn between two selves, but the curse pressed harder, and Callista, panting from her fight with Zareth, shouted across the battlefield. "End it, Magnus, fulfill the prophecy. Kill her and free yourself." Magnus roared, torn between her venom and Elena's desperate plea. The battlefield fell into a strange hush as wolves drew back, watching the Alpha's breaking point. Magnus trembled, torn between beast and man, his glowing eyes locked on Elena. Elena stepped forward, sword lowered, voice steady. "If you must kill me, Magnus, then do it looking into my eyes, not as a monster, as the man I love." Her words cut through the madness like a blade. Magnus froze, claws inches from her chest, his breath ragged. The Shadow Alpha snarled, "Do it, cursed one! Claim your fate!" But Elena reached out, pressing her hand to Magnus's trembling arm. "You are not a curse. You are Magnus, my mate, my alpha. Come back to me." Magnus's chest heaved slowly, painfully, his claws retracted, his form shuddering back toward human. His knees buckled, and he collapsed into her arms, blood and sweat soaking them both. The Shadow Alpha's snarl shook the ground. Weak. Love makes you weak. Zareth. Pale and bleeding, staggered beside Elena, sword still raised. Weakness or strength? He coughed blood, but his eyes burned with defiance. Because he's still standing, and you're not finished yet. Enraged, the Shadow Alpha raised his claw for a killing blow, but a horn sounded from the eastern walls. Reinforcements from the border villages, answering Zareth's earlier call. Wolves poured into the courtyard, rallying behind Elena's defiance. The Shadow Alpha snarled, his eyes locking with hers. This is not over, little Luna. With a single leap, he vanished into the night, his pack scattering with him. The courtyard was left in ruins, bodies strewn, fires burning. And in the center of it all, Elena held Magnus, Zareth bleeding beside them, and Callista dragged down by furious warriors at last. Dawn broke over silence and smoke, the fortress wryer of blood. The dead laid out in rows. Wolves moved like ghosts, tending to wounds, burying kin. Callista was dragged before the council in chains, her defiance unbroken. She stood tall despite her capture, her eyes sharp. You think this changes anything? Magnus is cursed. He will destroy you all in time. Zareth, his arm bandaged, glared at her. You'll never poison this pack again. Then kill me, she taunted, or prove you are cowards who can't even cleanse their ranks. Elena's gaze was hard as steel. No, death would free you too easily. You'll live to see us stand strong despite you. You'll rot in the dungeons, nameless, forgotten until your voice carries no weight at all. Callista's smirk faltered for the first time as guards dragged her away. Magnus, the weakened, sat among his pack, his expression heavy with shame. I nearly killed you, he murmured to Elena, his hand trembling in hers. She pressed his knuckles to her lips. You came back. That's what matters. He shook his head. For how long? The Shadow Alpha won't stop, and next time I may not find my way back. Elena held his gaze fiercely. Then we'll find another way. We'll fight this curse together. Magnus, you're not alone in this. Zareth approached then, leaning on his sword, but standing proud. The pack will follow her now, as much as they follow you. Remember that. You don't bear this weight alone anymore. The three of them stood together amidst ruin, bound by blood, betrayal, and survival. The Shadow Alpha was still out there, the curse still looming. But for now, they had endured. If you enjoyed listening to this story, please hit the like button, share it with someone who'd love this, and subscribe to Nightbond Narratives and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Tell me in the comments below which part of the world you are watching from. Also, tell me which part of the story you like the most. Compilation of a video of an audiobook takes a lot of time and effort, so if you see any ambiguity, please ignore it. I hope you will appreciate my effort.